David, thank you for taking the time. I know you also had a little rough day at
Yes.
Very good. So you gave a wonderful talk, a keynote, and it was talking about almost 11 years of experience, bringing it all together. Why don't you just kind of walk our YouTube subscribers through the key takeaways?
Oh, wow, yeah. A lot. We talked about a lot, right? But I'd say the key takeaways we mentioned today were, number one, the most important is you need to empathize with your users. What do we mean by empathize? We mean become your users. Because once you can become your users and get into their mind, that's where you're going to start seeing the problems, the issues. And more importantly, you interpret the data, the numbers you're seeing in the right way. Mm-hmm. So if I suddenly discover my site and understand it's being used in a certain way, and then I see a drop-off or some metric which doesn't make sense, I'm going to start understanding that. So we talked about empathy by recording yourself, recording your users, looking at recordings and tools like Hotjar. That's a great way to empathize. Number two takeaway was use funnels to find your biggest drop-off points, right? So since we don't have limited resources, it's really key that we use our resources in the best way. So you need to track out how your visitors are kind of dropping off until they reach a goal, maybe signing up, converting, buying a product, whatever that may be. And then find the point which is dropping off the most, and you invest your resources there. So prioritization is key. That was the second takeaway. The third takeaway was getting the big picture. Well, actually, no. The third takeaway was analyze your key pages, right? So now that we know where they're dropping off, so we're calling them the barrier pages, and also your high landing pages. You want to go in, and we mentioned the what and the why, you remember? So connect the dots. So if you're seeing in a heat map, users are interacting in a certain way, you want to then ask a question to see what they're saying. Like, what's missing on this page? Is this page clear? How can we improve it? And that's where, for example, in Hotjar, we had the pricing page, or example of Hotjar, right? Where we're seeing people interacting with certain parts of the page, but then they're answering about something else. And we realized, thanks to that, the what and the why were not connecting, and that led to a big project, which has a big impact on the business. So it's 1, 2, 3. Number 4, big picture. So now that we've gotten the shoes of the users, we are actually understanding what the biggest drop-off point is. We have identified where they're dropping off the most. Now comes the point where we want to understand the really big picture. And we do that with surveys, the most unsexy thing of all. So many people don't want to do surveys because they think they're not going to reprise, but surveys are super powerful. So with surveys, you want to be asking questions such as, why did you come to the site today, right? We call this a driver.
The drivers to actually come and interact with our business.
Exactly. So I'm understanding, why are people coming there? Second, I want to understand questions, why are people leaving? So what nearly stopped you from converting today, right? So we're surveying customers. And then third, hooks. What was it that persuaded you to choose us? What persuaded you to convert with us? And when you start getting what we call this big picture, it's like in chess, right? You can make that next move which counts because you can see the whole big picture. So in Hotjar, it's thanks to seeing all this stuff that we were able to make a really powerful split test on our registration page, which is where we had the biggest drop-off. Mm-hmm. So those were the 4 steps, the 4 kind of highlights we mentioned. And then finally, we had some quick wins, right? So today I said, some people are going to get upset about this, I said best practices suck because what's best for one site might not be best for the other. But there are some quick wins, right? So I don't know if we want to go into that now, but we can mention...
Well, why don't we mention some of those quick wins?
Let's do that. So one of them is build up commitment, right? Don't go with huge forms or trying to get your user to do too many things at one go. Cialdini wrote about building up commitment, and it's a brilliant way to do this in the web, which is break it down into very small steps. Get them to do very easy things, and as they invest more time into your site, the more likely they are to stick around. Yeah. And you need to test it, right? It doesn't work for everyone. Commitment is key. 2, social proof. Why should I choose you? Why are you a good choice, right? So big customers you have, where you've been featured, testimonials from your users.
Engagements if you've done some.
Exactly. These are all big wins. So all big, quick wins. So by deploying this, you have this data already available. Show it on your site. Then with third, we talked about kill stuff. Mm-hmm. So if in your heat maps you're seeing things which are not being interacted at all, just try and remove them. Split test to just bring the page to the bare minimum. Like with every agency I've spoken to, killing stuff usually has a win. So it's worth looking at. And the fourth, my favorite, is give a reason why. We are humans, we are not numbers. We want to know, why should I choose you? Why should I use you? So by giving a reason for your existence, it's very powerful. With Hotjar, we gave the example of we have a very bold vision. So I share this with our users. I say we want to change the way the web is built and improved by bringing in more qualitative insights. So that's a lot of our users connect with that, and they join the kind of movement.
They believe the vision, actually.
Exactly, yeah.
Very good, very good. So let's go back to something that you talked about, using surveys, and we talked about the drivers, the hooks. You mentioned emailing customers and asking them what was the one thing that would have stopped you from placing an order. Do you actually think that works? Actually, do people remember? Well, yeah, this would have broken, my decision.
That's a very good question. So one of the key things with surveys is that ideally you do it as close as possible to when they convert. Mm-hmm. If that's not possible because you have 1,000 customers over 6 months, it's still fine. Yeah. Most of them will remember. But ideally it should be fresh. In fact, in Hotjar, the way we do it is we trigger a survey as soon as they convert. Okay. So it pops up and it says, hey, we need your help. Can you please answer this survey?
Very good. So let's talk conversion optimization. You've been in the field for a long time, an old-timer. So what are some of the best resources to learn conversion optimization in your opinion?
That's a good question. And the difficulty here is that there is no kind of one resource about conversion rate optimization. To me, it's weird in a way, but conversion rate optimization is kind of a mixture of different skills. So you need to become good at UX, at user experience. So I highly recommend reading stuff by Steve Krug, right? Don't Make Me Think. Looking at papers by Nielsen, reading books, understand what makes user experience tick. The second is copywriting. You need, conversion rate optimization to me is salesmanship in web, right? So if you can't sell like the old copywriters used to sell, then so read stuff by Dan Kennedy, right? By John Capers. Find out who were the big copywriters.
Great one, the great
exactly.
ones.
And then marketing, right? And true marketing. Read books like The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing to understand what is it that drives people to come and buy from you and whatnot. So it's and then you need a good level of technical knowledge as well. Because typically in conversion rate optimization, it's understanding the problem and then knowing what you can do with the technology available. So that is a key thing to have. Yeah. So once I think you have 4 disciplines together, that's very powerful. And then obviously there are many CRO experts that have written some interesting stuff, right? But the danger there is, yes, go read them, but it's like you're reading the end result without learning the disciplines. So then we're in best practice zone, right? So
go back to that. I always say best practices are good in theory, but difficult in practice. So.
Agreed.
Very good. So let's talk about, you've talked also about your evolution in conversion optimization from the element level testing, and so kind of move forward. So let our audience know, also talk about that a little bit.
So when I put some time into this, I was thinking I want to share with the audience my journey, right, my evolution, and how I made a lot of mistakes. So as you said, I split it, I think it was 4 parts. The first part was, I remember I joined a software company 12 years ago or something, and they're like, we want to optimize, we want to get results. So that's where we started doing element design. So colors, position, size, elements. Yeah. But the focus is on elements and styling. And that gave us some wins, right? What's called a low-hanging fruit. Not big wins, because we identified some key things that could be solved. But the problem is, you need to be careful with low-hanging fruit, because if you pick that too often, you're going to break the branch. Yeah. So then you're going to end up with some monstrous page. So from there I moved on. I'm trying to remember what the second phase was. But the second phase was where we started doing more layout testing and called multivariate. Okay. So we were frustrated that our split tests were not winning. So we did and do not do multivariate testing. But it's the idea of you split the page into 6 areas and you put in 5 variations of each
and just let them run.
And let it run for months. Bad idea. Because it's not being based on what the problems your users are facing.
Rationale is just let the software decide.
Exactly. It's being lazy, pretty much. So that was the second phase, and that failed us because we weren't getting wins. Or we'd get a win and then deploy it and we wouldn't move the number.
Yeah.
So then came the third phase, which is where it took me longer to discover copy and persuasion. So I focused a lot on copy and persuasion, and we were doing a lot of tests, high volume, high intensity testing. But that didn't work that much for us neither, because we were so focused on speed, we weren't getting the quality. And then comes the fourth and final one, which is the focus on user feedback, right? What is it that our users are doing, and what do they feel? What are the issues, objections they're facing? And when you discover that and you dig deep, like we said with the big picture, that's where you're going to start doing less tests, and you're going to be doing bigger wins, smaller tests. And that's really where you want to be, right?
Definitely.
Low resources, limited amount of work, more research, more understanding. And the change you make, it becomes less about the split testing functionality is the tool to give you a win, but it's more split testing is the tool you measure to confirm that what your theory was is correct.
About your visitors or customers. And I will tell people, at least in our business, we spend about 15 to 20% of the time creating the test, but the pre-analysis, the post-analysis, that is up most of the time, and that's how you do it right. We've gone through also doing just enormous amount of testing, and just doesn't produce results. Let's talk about Hotjar. Everybody's excited about it. When you started Hotjar, when it was just an idea, did you imagine it's going to be this successful?
No. No clue. Basically, we realized that we were solving a problem for ourselves, right? I like to call it we were scratching our itch. And then we realized many people had the same itch. So we were, in a way, there's an aspect of being lucky as well, the timing.
Very good. So let's talk about kind of what's next for Hotjar. Everybody's asking about Hotjar. What's next? So what do you anticipate we might see in the next 6 to 12 months without revealing a lot? What you can share with us?
Yeah, we definitely want to build more upon the connection between analytics and feedback. We think that is key. So we're going to be very soon launching a new way of collecting feedback, which is less work, more intuitive, and enables your visitors to kind of give you feedback on the fly, as opposed to asking a question. So we're quite excited about that. But at the same time, we are doing a lot of prototyping and experimenting with different ways of doing analytics. So we want to strengthen the analytics side of Hotjar. So expect to see more on that front.
Very good. So now you've run Hotjar. How long has it been? A year and a half, 2 years now?
That's a good question. So we had a beat of 9 months, and then since we went commercial, it's been a year and a half.
A year and a half. Okay, so almost 2.5 years, getting close. What's the most difficult part of running Hotjar? I put you on the spot, I know.
No, that's a good question. There's a lot to choose from. In our case, we have a very particular challenge, which is our promise is all in one, but we have huge usage. We're on 200,000 sites. So it's keeping up between developing the product while keeping up with the architecture and supporting 200,000 sites is a difficult balance. But yeah, that's how you win the game, right? So if we can manage to sort that out, but that is our biggest challenge.
Very good. Last question, just out of the box. How does your day look like? What time do you wake up? What's kind of a personal me time do you spend?
Yeah, not much me time, no. So I wake up very early because we have young kids. So
How many?
We have two. Okay. One 2-year-old and one 3-month-old. Okay. So yeah, I have to wake up early. Okay. And that's good for me because that's the time where I typically catch up. I read, spend some time with my son, and I can be a little bit lighter. And then when the team wakes up, it's typically a lot of meetings, a lot of work. And then, unfortunately, I only manage to carve out time to do more of the creative stuff and strategic stuff late in the evening when everyone's gone to sleep. 2-3 hours working on that. And then the cycle continues. But we have something at Hotjar which works really well for us, which is we call it Working Wednesdays. So Wednesdays, no one is allowed to book any calls and meetings.
Nice. Okay.
So thank God for Working Wednesdays.
Thank God for Working Wednesdays. Thank you, David. Wish you best of luck, and thank you for the time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.